Welcome to the Jeff Miller Show. Each week, Jeff Miller of the Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance talks with Podcast Village host Charlie Burney about trends in business, consulting, and much more. The Consulting Alliance offers strategic counsel and tactical support to businesses, corporations, and nonprofit organizations in the Washington, D.C. area and beyond.
Well, happy Friday. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's nice to see you. First off, I have to ask you how you are.
We're getting better. We're on the mend.
Okay. Can you describe what happened?
Oh, I don't want to go into too much detail. It was just some back issues and some disc issues and fractured issue, but it's all, we're on the way. And actually, that's part of what's inspiring some of today's dialogue, yes. I think.
Well, you said to me that you were interested in talking about adversity today.
Yes, as a business owner and or as a solopreneur, the question is not when you're going to face an adversarial position or incident, but when you do, what do you do with it? How do you handle it? How do you maintain your focus throughout that? You know, as you know, and anybody who's experienced pain or back pain, it can be pretty all-inclusive.
Yes,
and it can lay you up, pun intended. And one of the things that occurred to me over the last 3 weeks when I was going through this is you've got to maintain focus. Mm-hmm. But you pick and choose. So, number one, there was no way that any of this was going to affect any of my client work. And as you know, I've got a pretty significant client load.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, they're laser focused, got in the car, psyched myself up before I walked in, and I was there.
You were on.
Yeah. The challenge was when I wasn't with clients. And what occurred to me is don't worry about filling 5 hours worth of work or busyness. Take 1 or 2 hours and just dedicate yourself to one thing. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I've done is there's a series of webinars that I've collected. I said, you know what? I'm going to watch one webinar every day. And they're about an hour to an hour and a half. So number one, it takes the focus off of me. So I'm not thinking about me or my pain or the tinging in my butt or anything like that.
Well, good.
Sorry for the visual. And it's something I'm working on the business.
Yeah, sure.
So there's a value there that goes, that's triple fold or even more. So the challenge is, what do you do when you're faced with adversity? How do you take it and not allow it to be all consuming? And part of that has to do with the vision that you have for your business. Part of it has to do with the passion that you have for your business. Part of it has to do with understanding the impact that you have on people's lives, whether they're clients or family. And a compromised dad or a compromised husband is not going to help the girls or Betsy. So, and it's not, as is usual, you're not looking for the innovation. You're looking to tweak. A client of mine said yesterday, the huge dividends come when you just tweak something. It becomes doable. It becomes something that you actually look forward to. There's an Eastern philosophy, I'm sure we've talked about it at one point, called Kaizen, which is how it's 1,000 miles deep and 1,000 or so more years old. But it's really how Toyota rebuilt the Japanese economy after World War II. So Kaizen means never-ending self-improvement. And whoever worked in the factory, from the top executive to the person who was pushing the broom at the end of the day, it was expected that every day you would do one thing
on the self-improvement curve
to make yourself better. And that's a lot different than innovation. Innovation connotates something like there's a secret formula to it, but Kaizen is really simple. Mm-hmm. One thing I can do. So as I was going through this convalescence, that was something that I kind of held close. Okay, what's the one thing I can do today? And again, it's all about getting out of your own head and just remembering why you're here.
Well, when you said creativity, I was thinking that to add to what you were saying, that sometimes it's how you respond, and in one case, it's how you were creative enough to turn it into an opportunity because you created this Kaizen moment, if you will. Sorry, I'm just learning that one. I'm a student of Eastern philosophy, and I really didn't know that one. So
it's a great philosophy. And to your point, response. So I think I've shared in the past, Jack Canfield, chicken soup for the soul kind of guy.
Yeah.
5 or 6 years ago, we were at a conference, an internet coaching conference, and he was the keynote. And he shared a lot of wisdom. And he's truly a man of abundance in the truest sense, because he said, listen, here, take my stuff. Give me credit, don't give me credit. I don't care, just use it with your clients because it works. And one of the things that he talks about is event plus response equals outcome. In that equation, if you want a different outcome, there's only one thing you can change, and that's your response. Mm-hmm. The event is, the outcome is. So this lesson is something that I've really incorporated. The work I do up at the prison,
Right.
we talk about this. How are you going to respond differently? You're in prison. It's a negative place, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a negative experience if you respond differently to the environment that you're in.
That's the special part.
Yeah. So, as you're going through this adversity in your business or in your life, whatever it is, think about how you're responding. If you don't like the outcome, think about the response. And how can I respond differently to turn this? An example that I use, so I've shared, my dad died in May of 2002. Suddenly, my mom died 7 months, 7 days later.
Yeah.
And when you go through that process, it's a painful, you're grieving. At a certain point during that process, I realized that I was stuck, and I was stuck in grief. And I realized that I needed to change my response. Life is short, and I needed to change my response to it. It's not surprising that 6 months after that is when I purchased my business. Mom and Dad is still dead. They're not here.
It's not the show title, by the way. It's not the show.
So it's not about rose-colored glasses and kind of, looking at the half. It's not about that. It's about the reality of the event and how are you going to change your response.
Yeah. What is it that Covey says, Jeff? Exercise integrity at the moment of choice, which is just, we're putting a different coat on what we're saying, right? We're saying that that's the crux, the magic place, the precious present, where we get to make a decision, make an outcome.
It's
pretty profound, but it's nice throwing it in the context of the, can you give me the word again?
Kazan.
Kazan, because I like me some old stuff sometimes to blend that in with the new. And it's always inspiring to see that similarity. There was Covey saying this, but here they were saying we want to improve ourselves every day. That's not far from what...
And, Tamar, our younger daughter, graduates. She does have a master's in art therapy.
Appeared on the Jeff Miller Show, yes.
Indeed. So she went to see Paul Simon in concert one night last week or this week, and she sent me an interview with him on Canadian Broadcasting Radio. And he said something really interesting. He talked about how angry people are. And just everything we approach with anger, as opposed to how do we solve the problem? And taking that back to what do you do with a bad back? What do you do with adversity? You can get angry. You can go into all kinds of negative places. Or you could say, well, the way to manage this anger is with joy. It's with abundance. It's with integrity. It's with changing your response and really believing and embracing that it really is within our individual control to deal with whatever comes our way.
And again, that's what we're doing as a business at the same time, too.
Yeah.
There's many of these points during the day, whether it's a pivot point or just a moment of choice where we can make those kinds of same, because we talk on this show all the time about the similarity between personal psychology and business psychology. So
yeah, and there's not really these days I don't really make a separation. We've talked about mindful leadership and one of the fallacies is that there's something called life-work balance. When that causes a lot of, it's a lot of difficulty. If you stand up on one leg, you can balance yourself, but for how long?
Not very long.
As opposed to if you just integrate who you are with all the different roles that you play. It's not about balance, it's about integration. It's about being the same person.
Right.
Whether I'm in the workplace, whether I'm talking to Betsy, whether I'm talking to the kids or friends.
Right.
I am who I am. And when you're able to do that, the tension levels go way down because now I don't have to pretend.
So what's going on at the Library of Congress?
A new exhibit on World War I.
Just thought I wanted to jump into there with a non sequitur real quick.
Yeah, that's fine. World War I exhibit opened recently. Very, very interesting. It's the 100th anniversary of Americans' involvement in the war. And given what's going on in the United Kingdom and their vote to leave the Union, unrest in Europe is usually never a good thing.
But unrest everywhere. What a week in the news with the sit-in by the Democrats, which I found amazing and will go in social media history, obviously, for what they were able to accomplish. But then the Brexit, or the possibility and now the actuality of the Brexit, and sports, a huge week in sports. So this has been a wild week. And then locally, obviously, a huge week in weather. Just bizarre. But I love to check in for the cultural aspect of the Jeff Miller Show and ask what's going on at the Library of Congress.
Well, here's something. The sit-in in Congress was an interesting thing. I'll speak personally.
Yeah, sure.
They sat in for a cause that I very much believe in. And I very much believe in the concept of public sit-ins. But how are you going to react when it's the other side that has a sit-in over something that you may not politically agree with? And what further kind of circus is created in Congress with people just having sit-ins. And I just think it's worth thinking about. I'm not sure I have an answer for it yet personally, but the question is, was there a Pandora's box that was just opened?
I think there was. And I think there's no doubt about it that I would be very surprised if we didn't see other actions that we're not really currently used to seeing, right, in this decade or in these last couple of decades. But I think we will see more unrest with Hillary or with Trump. I think we'll see more actions of political unrest. But it's, again, it's adversity. How are we going to react? Are we going to be pacifists? Are we going to react violently or loudly? Or how are we going to, in that moment, what decisions does that make about us as people and as a culture? I guess not as a business so much, but as a culture. I think it's a very scary time. And it's exciting, Jeff, but I do worry. You know, you and I both have kids, and I worry what is the political spectrum going to be in 10 years? Because it's going to be meaner.
I agree. I share the same fears. So much of the way we're approaching these issues are 20th century based. The model is broken. It doesn't work. So we're in the 21st century. If we choose to hang around this earth and do so in a way where we're able to feed our children, raise our families, live peacefully, a different approach needs to be had. The yelling doesn't work. Maybe the sit-ins don't work.
I don't think it's the sit-ins, but I don't think we know what it's going to be. And I'll tell you something, if I could jump in, if you don't mind. I'm working with Sarah here and Marcus, the amazing interns here in the studio that I have. So if I can give them a quick shout out on the show, I hope you don't mind. But working with people who are this young again, and you know, you guys know if you're listening that I'm in my 50s, but they are coming up with ways of talking about culture and ways of talking about politics that I can't guess. They're going to lead us through. I look at my 16-year-old twins that we talk about quite often. They have a completely different way of looking at ecology and consumable foods and things like that than I ever would have guessed that they would have. I'm surprised, the next generation, and tomorrow's part of that too. They're going to find a way. They realize what a holy mess things are. But the political system, I think the momentum there is so horribly scary for change.
We've talked in previous podcasts about building community. And if you want to solve a problem, build community. And if you want to build community, by definition, you need to talk to people who don't agree with you. Yeah. And that's a 21st century model.
21st century model.
It's stop yelling at one another. I can sit and speak with you all day, and we can agree, and we can pat each other on the back, and we've solved nothing.
That's right.
If I can sit down with somebody who doesn't agree with me, and we can figure out a way.
And have an honest cultural exchange.
Yeah, it's not about even convincing. It's about understanding and humanizing the problem.
That's evolution. Yeah.
You know, one of the things, and not to get partisan or not to get political, but one of the things about what frightens me about the potential Trump presidency and even just this campaign is how he's introduced language that dehumanizes people.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And that kind of rhetoric is always dangerous. So how do we stop barking at one another and build community by definition with people who don't agree with you? We can do it locally. Mm-hmm. I've talked about the Breaking Bread initiative that Betsy and I are running about, having conversations about hunger in Montgomery County. Mm-hmm. If I'm really interested in trying to solve that issue, I need to talk to people who are hungry. I need to talk to people who are wealthy. And that's the only way to get around the table. Yep. So it's a choice that we have to make, the same way we make choices about how we deal with adversity.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And yeah, that's it. I won't be political anymore, Charlie. That's it. At least for today.
Well, I think that's perfect for today then, Jeff. Thank you very much. And we'll go home and exercise some integrity in the moment of choice and adverse. And trying to turn opportunity. It's always a challenge. Let's not complain first. Let's think. So.
Listen, challenge is what makes life joyful and challenging and just, go integrity. Good word to end on, Charlie.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much, Sarah and Marcus from Podcast Village. It's the Jeff Miller Show.
Have a great weekend.
The Jeff Miller Show is brought to you by Podcast Village, located at Launch Workplaces in Gaithersburg, Maryland. If you would like to contact Jeff or Charlie, please tweet to @Podcast Village or @JeffMillConsult. You can also email Jeff at jeff@jmconsultingalliance.com. What story would you like to tell?